So this is going to be great for people that are posting organically, meaning you're not going to be, spending money on ads, and you're looking to reach new audiences. You've got a great opportunity to come up on the Explore feed or come up on people's pages a lot easier, hopefully.
Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Car Brulhart. If you don't know who Car is, you got to know Car. She is a social media strategist and consultant who specializes in helping coaches and service providers sell more with Instagram. Her group coaching program is called The Social Department. She's also an official Instagram ambassador with the Creator Class. Car, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Hey, Michael. Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Today, Car and I are going to talk about how to sell more with Instagram using a proven organic framework. No paid ads required. Now, before we go down that road, Car, I would love to hear a little bit of your backstory. How'd you get into Instagram and marketing in general? Start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, sure. Well, you're probably going to laugh when I tell you that I was actually a tax accountant living in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from, before I even knew what marketing was. And so I was doing taxes for about almost 5 years. I was about to go and do my designation program. And then I actually met my now husband on a vacation in Puerto Vallarta.
Nice.
So he was like this catalyst that I needed to realize. Well, I'd already realized this, Michael, but he was the catalyst that pushed me to actually leave accounting and go and pursue my kind of creative life. So I ended up moving to Berlin, Germany. He's German, and he was working for Google at the time. And so I moved to Berlin. I'm also half Swiss, so I was able to kind of flow in between borders rather easily. And I applied for a position at the United Nations World Food Program in a role that was a volunteer role that was all for social media management. They were at the time, we were a founding team of 10 people that were tasked with bringing an app called Share the Meal to global markets. And so I applied as a volunteer to do all the things social media, not just Instagram, but Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I also did PR outreach. I did all the business development, partner management, a lot of the celebrity handling, so to speak. And then after my kind of volunteer stint was over, they offered me a paid consulting role there as head of social for the app, which I obviously took. And that's how I got my start. And I think it's important to also say that I was trained under brilliant people that were former BCG consultants, former McKinsey consultants. So I got this crash course in an MBA without having to pay for it. And that's really
how long ago was that? That
was in 2015.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you got this crash course. Keep going with the story.
Okay, so crash course in marketing and Instagram. The app goes on to become the most successful charity app ever on both Play stores, so Google Play and Apple. And we start winning all these awards. The pages start blowing up. Our content goes viral. I'm managing tons of different campaigns for partners like Instagram, Facebook, MasterCard, Michael Kors. We've got all kinds of cool celebrities that we're doing campaigns with all the time. And then my husband gets a promotion. And so we move to New York City, and my time at the UN comes to an end there. And so while I'm in New York City, Trump had just come into president, so it just gives you a good timeline. And I had to wait 10 months for my work visa because I'm Canadian. And in that 10-month period, I wasn't able to work. And so I decided to play around with Instagram and create this page where I'm also half Mexican. Probably already lost half of you listening. But so I decided to create a page where I was coming to Mexico, working with local communities to source really beautiful goods like homewares, all artisanal, all handmade. And I would sell them on Instagram and then donate all the proceeds back to local causes and local communities here in Mexico. And so that's like where it all kind of like started. And then as time went on, I started getting people actually requesting me through like word of mouth, through my work, through Share the Meal, as well as through my other Instagram page, asking if I wanted to do their social media, like management, create content for them. And at the time, I was like just so excited that anybody thought that I could like do this for them. Like you second guess yourself and everything, especially as a new entrepreneur. I didn't even know that that's what I wanted to do. And so I was saying yes to everything, making like $0, like honestly charging peanuts for full service everything. And it was just such a great way to really just get my education in Instagram, Facebook, social media, and what that world could look like.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit. Take us up to the present. Like, where are you now? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so now I am actually, believe it or not, an official Instagram ambassador as part of the creator class. And I've got my own full-time consulting business doing Instagram. So basically, I've got programs for people where I teach them how to grow their following, everything organic, so no ads, how to build their businesses on Instagram, how to scale, how to sell, how to grow followers. And I have this full time. So it's my biggest revenue stream is my program, which is a group program, and it's been incredible. I've gotten to work with so many different types of people. Honestly, every single niche under the sun, I've worked with them: celebrities, product businesses, coaches, founders, corporations, agencies, you name it. I've done it. Yeah, I feel like I totally like fast forwarded because I feel like it's like, okay, well, she was doing this in Berlin and then she went to New York and then she started her own thing. But the reason I started my whole business on Instagram, that I went out on my own really, was that at the start of COVID in 2020, it was March 2020, I was 9 months pregnant with my first child, and I got laid off from my role as head of social media and head of partnerships at a startup. And so literally a week before she was born, I had no employment and I was left scrambling, honestly thinking I'm never going to work again. I have a kid now, like this is my role. And I was never somebody that saw myself as like a full-time mom, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's the most, amazing job a woman can have. One of the most amazing jobs, of course, but it wasn't like my end all be all was to be a mom. And so I took 10 months kind of in like a maternity role, getting into this new role. And that's when I went all in with Reels around December of 2022. 2021. Yeah, 2020. 2020.
Very cool. So
you're weird.
What I know, it's all a blur. Instagram, official Instagram ambassador. Like some people aren't going to know what that means. So I'm curious, what is that exactly?
Yeah. So Instagram has what they call a creator class. And basically, we are hand-picked creators, people that create content that educates others about how to use Instagram, how to use the platform. And I was one of the original kind of hand-picked creators for them. I make content for Instagram, teaching other people how to use Instagram to grow their business. So it's really fun.
Very cool. So thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure so many other people can relate to so many aspects of your story. We're here today to talk about selling with Instagram. And what I would love you to address is, why is Instagram so good for selling? Because a lot of people might not think of Instagram as a platform for selling. And I'm just curious from your perspective, why it's so good for that.
It's so great because it's free traffic, it's free advertising, it's free community. And what people don't realize is that everybody and their dog is on Instagram. And even if they're not actively, or if they don't think that they're actively consuming and aka buying things, they are. Everything we see on Instagram is in some kind of way, shape, form influencing us in our purchasing decisions. And there's been this huge opportunity, especially as a creator, as an educator now, to reach whole new audiences that weren't possible before through platforms like Instagram, and making education especially so accessible. So if we have like anyone that's a coach or someone that's a done for you service provider or product business, your audience is on Instagram. And honestly, I tell people this all the time, that websites are almost like the second part that people should be thinking about. Like, if you don't have a presence on Instagram, then it's the new calling card. That's the first place that people will go to really understand if you are someone that they want to work with, they want to buy with, what's your story. And so Instagram now, the way it's evolved, has just made it so much easier for us to tell our stories, to connect with people in different ways, much farther beyond just like a single image.
Awesome. There's a lot of people that are not active on Instagram that are super active on the other social platforms that are like, you make a really good point, Car. So, and then those that are like super active on it are like, I already knew that.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about some of the frustrations that you think marketers are facing right now with Instagram, because obviously there's been a lot of change, right? Especially it feels like in the last couple of months, there's been some pretty big changes. What's going on with, what are some of those big frustrations?
Like, all their latest outrage. Because I hear a lot. Like, I'm on the ground. I'm coaching hundreds of people every week inside of my programs, live coaching. And I'm in the DMs all the time with people. And because I'm an ambassador, I get a lot of people getting angry at me. And I'm like, I don't know about this either. But the latest updates are that there's a new Meta verified for businesses. So if you remember, Meta recently allowed people to purchase their own verification, right? So you could get that blue coveted tick mark. And now they're expanding the program to businesses. So there's going to be essentially 4 new tiers that people can purchase every month, starting from, I believe, $14.99 a month, all the way up to $350 a month. Wow. Monthly, right? And so people, the reason they're upset is that there's certain features in each of these different tiers that are being perceived as a little bit like they're making the playing field unequal. So for example, certain tiers will have biannual customer support calls. Every single tier has increased search engine, meaning that you'll be at the top of search results. And so it's causing a bit of uproar. I think it's a little bit too soon to kind of raise our arms up and get upset. And I also think that there's a lot to be said in terms of really great content. Like, if you're not paying for verification, that does surface on the app, and they are making, I think, in my opinion, a good concerted effort to surface original content that people aren't paying necessarily to get surfaced.
For those of us that already have our businesses with blue check marks, are we going to lose them like we did on Twitter/X? I mean, have you heard anything about this?
No, I haven't heard anything about that, but it doesn't seem like you will. I think everyone that's been grandfathered in, so everyone that had the press to prove the tick mark, that was the original way it came about, will keep their tick marks. And then anyone that's paying currently for their tick mark, as long as you don't cancel it, you're going to keep it. And there's not going to be like a differentiation between if you got it organically through press or if you purchased it. So it's pretty equal in that sense.
Awesome. Let's also talk about content aggregators, because this has been a big part of the news as well. You want to talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Instagram has made a change to the algorithm, one of the many algorithms, right? There's not just one, where they're going to deprioritize content from content aggregators. So what the heck is a content aggregator, right? So picture all of those meme accounts that we like to follow, or any kind of like celebrity fan page where it's just repurposed reels or images that have been already published on another account, like a press account or a magazine. These accounts are going to start to get deprioritized with the Instagram algorithm, which is actually good news. And I think that's something that they should have done a long time ago, believe it or not. A long time ago, meaning like 2018. And so this is going to be great for people that are posting organically, meaning you're not going to be, spending money on ads, and you're looking to reach new audiences. You've got a great opportunity to come up on the Explore feed or come up on people's pages a lot easier, hopefully.
Very cool. And obviously, there's a million other things that are happening all the time with Instagram. We're just scratching the surface of a couple of these high level things. So let's talk about your framework. We're going to now talk about how to sell with Instagram, how to sell more with Instagram organically. At a high level, and we're going to break down the steps of your framework, but at a high level, if people follow what we're going to talk about today, what can the outcomes possibly be?
Yeah, I mean, they're not what's possible. I'm like, this is what's happening on the ground. I'm like, you are going to get more engagement. So more comments, more DMs, more people writing you and asking about your offer. You're going to get more interest in your offer. So more sales, more conversions. You're going to get more views, believe it or not. You're also going to spend, this is my favorite part of it, you're going to spend less time creating content for Instagram.
Those are all pretty big. Those are all pretty big promises, Car.
I know, but I've got the testimonials to back it up.
No, it's totally cool. I mean, like you piqued the interest of a lot of people. All right, so let's dig in. This is a multi-part process. So what's the very first step in your process?
Yeah, so I want people, before I even get into the method, right? I want them to think about how we've all been kind of trained and had content pillars shoved down our throats since like the beginning of Instagram time. And I was finding, after talking to like over 1,000 people, literally, I found that content pillars were really confusing for most people, especially business owners, especially creatives, where they didn't want to get kind of put into a box, but they still wanted to be known for things. And so I decided to throw content pillars out the window, which no one else has ever spoken about, right? And so this is already very controversial.
And I think that's great. Some people are applauding you. Keep going.
Yeah. So content pillars out. In is hopping. We are going to start hopping on Instagram so that it becomes more fun and we get more engagement, more conversions, and spend less time. So hop just stands for, the first one is humble brag. And do you want me to?
No, don't say the other ones yet, but let's talk about the first one. Okay. So what is humble brag? Like, let's dive into the first one.
Yeah. So the humble brag, it tends to trip people up. So believe it or not, especially my ladies out there, we have a really hard time, but a lot of men as well, believe it or not. Most recently, a lot of men have been telling me that they agree that they have a very difficult time selling on Instagram and talking about themselves on Instagram. So anything that they've achieved, they're like, well, why would I talk about that? That feels really icky. It feels like, I'm going to be considered a little bit like arrogant. And I'm like, absolutely not. Imagine that you're at a job interview and they want to know, okay, what have you done to get to where you're at, right? They need to know all the things that you've achieved. And so the humble brag is meant to prompt you. These are all prompts, right? To prompt you to talk about things that you've achieved, things that are going to inspire other people, even testimonials or sales goals that you've achieved, things like that are going to help people see that you are the right person for them, that you have achieved something that maybe they want to achieve, or you've achieved something for somebody else.
So this is so important because I like this analogy of the job interview. If you can't confidently tell someone in a job interview what you've accomplished, you will not get hired, right?
Absolutely.
And I think what I hear you say is if you cannot humbly communicate some of the wins that you've had, you will not be taken seriously as someone who will be able to sell something to your audience, right? So why is that so important on Instagram? And then maybe we can talk about like how the heck we even go about doing it.
Yeah, it's so important to brag on Instagram because honestly, it's so saturated, and that shouldn't hold you back from starting or posting or thinking that you're not going to have success. You're going to have success, but you need a strategy around it. And so humble brag is just that prompt to remind you that as people are new to you, right? We're always having new audiences come to us, whether you did a podcast or maybe you posted to Pinterest or you have a YouTube channel or a blog. You're always having new audiences come to you. Also, the algorithms are going to send you people, right? And so all these people that are constantly coming to your page or landing on your reel, for example, they need to know your story, and they need to know what you're capable of, what you've achieved. And so by rotating that humble brag in your content often, that's the key theme, often, you're going to be able to capture those people and almost also create a relatability.
So how do we go about doing this?
So all you're going to have to do, honestly, it's so simple. I want you to think about it as a circle. Okay. So as we're going through content, we're always cycling through content. And for me, I'm a big advocate of repurposing content and not like thinking that I have to reinvent the wheel or come up with original ways to do things, because honestly, everything's been done. And that's another thing, right? Everything's been done. So don't think that you have to reinvent. But when you're going through Hop, you need to think about people and meeting them where they're at. And so what I mean by that is that a lot of people that I have worked with tend to assume that everybody knows as much as they do, right? And we talked about this before, Michael, where like we just assume, okay, well, he knows everything that I know, so what value am I going to provide for him? And that's just not the case. And this is something that I have been proven over and over again in my own business, even as a coach in my programs, where I'm like, people really only know about 10% of what I know. And even if I know, maybe there's a super advanced person in my group, I usually tend to know about 10% more than that person. And so when we're doing our content, we're creating content, we've got to bring people in and meet them where they're at. And so as part of the Hop method, you're always going to be reminding yourself to meet the beginners who still need the basics, and then the more advanced people. And then depending on where, what kind of offers you have, you can then funnel them into those appropriate offers.
So let's give some examples of a humble brag, and maybe you could share some of your examples just so people can understand how that might sound.
Sure. Okay. So a humble brag for me would be, let's see. I went all in with Instagram, and 10 months later, I had a multiple six-figure business, let's say. That's an example of a humble brag. And then that by default creates curiosity in the audience that's listening or watching the content. And they're like, well, how did you do it? And then I can tell them, well, here's how I did it in a few tips on the next piece of content. Or maybe I take them to a webinar or a training or something they can purchase to learn the exact framework, the exact steps I took to do that, right? So that's a humble brag.
Let me try an example too real quick. So we just literally launched a brand new podcast called AI Explored, and I had a big goal. I didn't know if we were going to meet it, which was getting 1,000 people to download the first episode. And we are 7 days into the podcast. We've already had 1,500 people on the first episode. And today we dropped the second episode and we're already over 500 people.
Wow.
Is that an example of a humble brag? I'm telling a story.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about something, but I'm doing it in a way that, is buried in a story. So it doesn't feel all braggadocious, right?
Exactly. And I love that you said that it's buried in the story, because like there's so many people with good intentions out there that are saying things like, let's inject storytelling into content creation, and no one's going to pay attention if you don't know how to storytell. But like, what the heck does storytelling mean? And what if I'm not a storyteller, which nobody really is, especially by training, right? And so this really helps you get clarity on that. You start to just draw from moments in your life or in your life's timeline where you're like, oh, that was pretty badass. Like that was insane. Like that really was surprising that I was able to do that. With your example too, I love that we could frame it. So whenever we have in Hop, whenever we have an idea for the humble brag, for example, I want you to always write it out as if it was a hook. So you can write out the idea, whatever, as a bullet point to just get the juices going. But then you really want to write it as a hook. So for that one, Michael, you could have said something like, we set out a goal to have 1,000 subscribers with our new AI podcast, ... And then in the caption, you could do, or in a transition in the reel, you could be like, and instead we did this. And then it's like, subscribe to the podcast.
Okay, cool. All right,
Mhm.
good. So I think this is really helpful for people to kind of understand. So I would imagine when you're coming up with humble brags, especially if we're going to cycle these through, because we're going to talk about the other two letters in just a second, there's probably a lot of things that you have achieved or your business has achieved that you could
Mm.
talk about with pride and humility. And I think people just need to wrap their mind around the why, right? The why behind it is because people don't want to buy from people that they're not convinced
Mhm. Can
either
get them a result.
have the goods, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so what are some other examples of like where we could source humble brag ideas from, just so people like
Yeah.
where do we look for these ideas?
So you can also source these from testimonials,
Okay.
and these are huge, right? And if you don't have testimonials, go and ask people. Go and ask them for the testimonial and say, "Listen, I would love to hear about this specific experience that you had. You
Mm.
know, you got more sales, or when was the first time you saw a new follower after joining, or whatever it is, right?" So source those testimonials, and the humble brag is such an easy way then to showcase testimonials in a fun, creative way that isn't just like, a post that's like, here's what Sarah had to say about my program. So that's one way. I love testimonials for the humble brag. The other thing can also be, I think you kind of mentioned this, which is very important, is that everything should be through the lens of the business, right? Or of your niche. So you don't want to get too wild with this brag. Like I probably wouldn't talk about how I was an elite volleyball player when I was in high school. Not that relevant unless I tie it
Unless
to
you could
like,
make a story about something you learned from it, right?
yeah, and I'll talk about how we could use a story like that later on in the hot method though.
So just so people have a context of how they're going to use these, this
Mhm.
can be used for captions. It can be used for video,
Mhm.
stories. I mean, you could use these in all the different kinds of mediums across Instagram, couldn't you?
Emails, blog posts, YouTube. It could be any type of content. This works across channels, and that's why I like it so much.
Sweet. Okay, let's
Mhm.
talk about the O in your method. What's the next step?
Okay, so next up is your origin story. And so this one tends to get people tripped up with the humble brag. They're like, well, I went to, the University of Dakota and I got a master's in blah, blah, blah. And then I built my business. So is that origin story or humble brag? That is your origin story. And so the way you need to think about your origin story is just like, what did you do to get started? Where did you start? And then what did you do to get here? I think that's really clear. So if it helps you to draw out a timeline of your business specifically through the lens of your business or your niche, that can be really helpful for people. And then you can pull out moments that you may assume other people will relate to. So I really think that this is a really one of the most important. Well, I mean, they're all very important, but the origin story, it really attracts your people to you, right? So whenever I tell my origin story, which was like I got laid off when I was 9 months pregnant and started my business on Instagram, and here's where I'm at today, I get so many DMs from people, especially women, who are like either going through what I went through right now, or they went through the same thing, but they haven't managed to quite get to a place like where I'm at. And usually they want to be at a place where I'm at. They want to be entrepreneurs, or they want to build a product, or they want to quit their job that they hate.
What's really interesting is people that are regular listeners to this podcast understand that they hear origin stories almost every time I get a new guest on
Yeah.
my show, and if they find it interesting, it's kind of proof that it works, right?
Mhm.
But maybe what some of them are struggling with is how do I tell my origin story on Instagram? I mean, like talk
Mhm.
to me a little bit about that.
Okay. So this is where like all of the kind of features and services on Instagram get really helpful for us. So I always go for Reels just because Reels give you such a great opportunity to reach new audiences. Carousels seem to be making a bit of a comeback lately though. And so it could be a Reel, it could be a carousel. Let's say we're doing a Reel though. You could very easily scroll or sign up for my Sounds membership and find a trending sound or an audio that inspires something, or there's a lyric in it. And usually by the time it's up, there will be examples of other people if it's a trend, right? So that's the fun part, I think, that Instagram has brought, which is very much inspired from TikTok, which is like this use of audio and lyrics and musicality to tell our stories. So don't underestimate the power of a very good lyric to tell your origin story. Even if it's not trending, if you're like, oh yeah, this song by Madonna really like says something to me, use it, and then just use your text on your reel to give me a little bit of that context.
Okay, so this is interesting. So in this case, you're talking about shorter reels, right? Because reels can go pretty darn long, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, they're up to 90 seconds these days.
So you can take, so in that case, you're taking a song, which is going to maybe have some sort of a theme. That's kind of the theme of your story. And then you're putting words on the screen while the song is playing. And are you showing pictures of your backstory or clips of you doing stuff on the screen, or what's your thoughts on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, so here's the challenging part is that most of us don't have video footage, let alone a lot of photos of our origin, of our backstory, of like when we were like grinding in a little cubicle, right? We didn't have photos of that because it wasn't great. But so instead, you can kind of take B-roll footage or footage of yourself now just working or, you know, doing any kind of activity that as it relates to your business, and use that footage, use that B-roll footage. It doesn't all have to be like contextual.
Is this now with the origin story? There's so many different ways to tell your origin story, right? And is the only way to do it in a 90-second reel, or are there other ways that you could do it? Like, for example, if you're live on Instagram, would it make sense to tell your origin story? Would it make sense to have a picture with a longer caption that shares some of that origin story? Or would it even make sense to like do stories, Instagram stories, where you share it and save it in a highlights thing? I don't know. I'm just free flowing a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that those are all really good examples. So, you know, carousel posts, I love just because of that option to show up multiple times in the feed. So if your first slide isn't shown, sometimes the second slide will get shown. Usually it does. And then, you know, you can also think about this as just a single image. I don't love single images though, only because of that, you don't get that second opportunity to come up. So that's still powerful though. You can do imagery. You can also do a talking to camera reel, which I really like. And this one I really encourage you to get really creative with, in the sense of like, don't just do a script that's like, when I was 17, I fell and broke my leg when I was riding my horse, right? Because it's too predictable. Instead, I want you to tell that story, hit the record button, start talking from the beginning of your story. But then when you're editing, that's where the magic happens. You're going to edit so that you start at almost like an inflection point, or a part way through your script, so that I'm like, oh, I feel like I just walked in to a really interesting conversation.
Yeah. So it'd be kind of like I was just let go out of the hospital in my cast. And then like, this is a concept we've talked about with a lot of people that have been on this show before, right? Especially the YouTubers, right? Where they pick the arc of the story and they put that at the very front in order to get people to watch it. Is that kind of what you're implying?
Absolutely. That's a good tactic.
So getting back to the origin story, how do we know what part of it to share, especially considering like we've got 90 seconds, it seems, you know, like there's not a lot of time to share a lot of stuff there. So how do you recommend people think about this, and how can they share their origin story differently over and over again? Like, let's start with, first of all, what do we decide to share?
So I think you don't need to think about having a new story every time. And again, what you decide to share, you need to always have it come back to the lens of your business and think about, how does this story lead them to their next goal or their next desire as well? And I think that that's really key. A lot of people are like, well, what's the point of this? And it's like, well, it's to show them, again, what's possible for them. So always have their desires, their goals, their dreams. What is that? And how can you help guide them towards that by telling an element or aspect of your story that ties into that?
I like this.
Right.
So, for example, you mentioned when we were doing the interview that you were formerly an accountant, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I could see part of your origin story talking to people that want to transition into a different career, right? So you
Yes.
could talk about like how accountant turns popular Instagram, gets to work with famous people on Instagram or something, right? And
Yep.
that's an angle that that's a story you could tell very rapidly. And
Mhm.
for, especially for people who are looking to move into a different kind of field, right? And that's one part of your origin story. I'd imagine you could tell another part of the origin story about like how you were laid off, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And how
Mhm.
you were pregnant during COVID, trying
Mhm.
to figure out what you were going to do, and then ultimately selected by Instagram, right, to be one of their official ambassadors.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just free flowing, but is this the kind of stuff that you would want to think through? Putting
Exactly.
yourself in the idea like, okay, showing a transformation that happened in your life and how it could happen to
Mhm.
someone else.
Absolutely. Transformations are really big. How you overcame a challenge could be really important. But yeah, you're spot on.
Okay, so far we've talked about the first thing is the humble brag. And the
Hmm.
humble brag is where you talk about some of the things that you have achieved that are inspirational in nature so that you can establish credibility, reputation, authority, whatever it takes to send a signal to your audience that you and or your company or brand is someone that they ought to pay attention to. Then we've got origin story. Origin story is slightly different than humble brag because you're going back to a state, a
Hmm.
beginning state, it sounds like, right? And you're
Yeah.
showing a progression over time, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it does accomplish some of the same things that the humble brag does, but it's slightly different, right? So what is the distinguishing differentiation, just so for people who might be struggling a little bit between the distinguishing between, because
Hmm.
a humble brag and a origin story sound similar, right?
They do. And so I always like to say for the humble brag, try to do that as measurable as possible. So if you want to throw a number in there or a
Mm,
numeric value or a time, like a year, that's really helpful. And always also thinking about the achievements that you've helped other people do, right? Other things that you've done for other people.
very cool. Okay, so let's talk about P and
P.
how.
Okay. So P is, you're going to probably laugh at this, but it's so obvious. It's prop up your product or prop up your service. And once again, like I said earlier, it's because we don't tend to be good salespeople. We tend to like forget that we need to remind people of our offers and what it is that we do and what we can help with, right? And so as we have gone from H and O, now we're at P, it's kind of this natural cycle where, like you said, Michael, people need to sort of feel like they know you, that they like you, and that they trust you in order to take that purchasing decision. I mean, that's the most traditional way of thinking of the customer journey, right? They buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so now that we're here, now that we've told them those other stories, we can start actually using different content pieces to really sell them on our service or our product. And that's what prop up your product or service is. It's just honestly this prompt, this reminder that you need to have content specifically just about conversion to get people to convert.
Talk to us a little bit about how that might look or sound.
Yeah. Okay. So this one's actually really fun. This is probably the one that you are already doing, believe it or not. This is like your hot tips, your hot takes, your gem content that's got a piece of, a gem buried inside of it that's going to get somebody a result after they do the thing that you're telling them to do. This can be listicles. So like curated content from the internet or from your own, mind, a list of things that people will save and share that's very useful to them. So this is really that useful content. It can look like educational content if that helps you come up with an idea, but it's going to ideally get them a result. That's the best kind of prop up your product or service content that you can create. Is something that's going to get somebody a really quick result and that they're going to save or share or even thank you for later on.
So this is where I think some people are probably in their mind okay, I can relate if I was them. I'm thinking, okay, I understand hot tip, hot takes, listicles, and
Mhm.
educational content, but how am I propping my product inside of that? So help people understand the
Yeah.
connection between sharing a tip or a cool perspective, but and how that actually relates to selling a product or service.
Yeah. So the coolest part about this one is that the selling will actually happen more in the caption. So in your caption, I want you, so
Oh.
the hook is like the thing that draws their attention in. That's like, here is these are the trending hooks on TikTok right now, for example.
Mm.
Right. So it's like, oh, interesting. And then you give them their hooks, you give them the meat. And then in the caption, you're like, if you want more ideas for your content, or you are looking to go beyond just writing hooks, I welcome you to check out this product. And then I have 2 calls to action that I encourage people to use. So most people, first of all, a call to action is just what is it that you want that person to do next? And this is fundamental for conversions. A lot of us tend to like wonder, why aren't we making sales, or why isn't anyone asking me about this offer? Because you're not guiding them or telling them what to do next. It's not enough for them to see your product or your service or your coaching and then understand that you have something to offer them for sale. And so that's very fundamental. So in that caption, you would then outline your offer, and then I would add those 2 calls to action. So one would be a guiding call to action, which is what do you want them to do next in terms of the offer? So is it DM me the word or comment the word sell to get the link, or join my wait list, or book a one-to-one call, or get on my discovery call, right? And then the other call to action is that conversational call to action, which is really just that stimulator to get comments and start discussions.
So that would be like, let me know what you think in the comments below, that kind of thing.
That would
Or
be it. That would
yeah,
be it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Fascinating. Okay, so this is what's really intriguing. The prop up your products and services is not what it sounds like at first glance.
Right.
It's not like you hard selling a product. It's instead you are actually providing value,
Mhm.
and then you're in the captions providing the option for people to go a little bit deeper, which I think is the magic sauce where everybody does it wrong, right? Like some people are just actively saying, here's my product, go buy it, right?
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, here's an example of how to do something. And if you want to go deeper, we sell this physical thing, or we have this coaching program, or we have this whatever conference you can come to, right?
Mhm.
So this is fascinating. So like draw the dots between the H and the O and the P. You said it was a cycle. So help
Yeah.
us understand how the cycle all works together.
So it's a cycle, but again, I don't want people to leave here and feel like, oh no, do I start with H or do I start with P or O, right? That's the beauty of the HOP method. You can start anywhere you want, but the way you need to think about
You
it
can
is
hop
that,
in wherever you want. I had
yeah,
to say
yeah,
that.
hop
Yeah.
in wherever you want. But what you really need to remember, again, is take this away. Not everyone is consuming your content linearly. That's very much an outdated way of using Instagram. That's how it used to be, right? It used to be quite linear, and it's not anymore. It's algorithmic. And so no one is seeing your content the way you think they're seeing it, or consuming it the way that you're consuming it. No one's going through every post and judging it the way we judge ourselves. Okay. So I release you from that to start. But I want you to always remember as well how I mentioned how there's those beginners and then there's the more advanced people. You want to be talking to them and cycling through and making sure that you're addressing those different types of audiences or buyers. And you'll do that by cycling through HOP method.
Well, and what's interesting about this concept of beginners versus advanced, the algorithms are smart. They're going to know who the advanced people are that are interested in this topic, and it's going to show it to them. And that's probably going to be a different audience. And they're probably going to come in through one of your props, right? And then maybe they'll do a little looking at your other stuff. And in the process, they'll see they'll watch your humble brag, right?
Yep.
Or they'll watch your origin story because they've drawn in through this P. And or they could be drawn in through any of them, right? And that's where, is that how this works? Like one of them, they all draw people in, and then they
Yeah.
decide to consume more of your content and decide if you're for them or not.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that that sort of touches on something else that a lot of people aren't thinking about. And you shouldn't be thinking about these things, right? Like you're not, you have been doing this for 10 years, but like there's different stages of people's buyer's journey. And you need to meet them where they're at as well there. So for example, if they have never heard about you, you're still in that awareness stage. Perhaps you just started that, right? So that's probably where that origin story best fits in terms of like a business objective. I would assign that awareness, right? And then as now they've hit that follow button. They're like, oh, I like Car. This is a cool origin story. It resonates with me. I also, had a similar story or something happened, or I just really like how she got out of that hole she was in, right? So follow button. And then the next piece of content, maybe they see prop up your product and they're like, okay, she's selling a workshop where she's going to walk me through XYZ. And so they're still understanding if you're the right person for them. And then the next time that they see your content, maybe it's origin story again, or maybe it's humble brag. And so then they start to get to know you better and how you think, and they get to also see the results that you've gotten other people or yourself. If you've gotten nobody results, maybe you're brand new to this and you're just like, I'm going to start posting on Instagram today and become a coach. You can talk about what you have achieved. That definitely counts.
Car, thank you for sharing your strategy with us. It's a really intriguing concept. If people want to connect with you on the socials, where do you want to send them? I'm guessing Instagram. And if they want to learn more about your products and or services, where do you want to send them also?
Yeah. So come over on Instagram. It's just my name, Car Brulhart. And I have something free for all of you who are listening today or watching. It's at carbrulhart.com/SME.
And what do they get when they go there?
They're going to get a free workshop that's going to walk you through the HOT method. It's my HOT method workshop, and you're getting it for free. And there's also going to be another little bonus there for you. You'll
Awesome.
have to go there to find it.
Awesome. So folks that are listening, it's KAR and then BRULHART.com/SME. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Car, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. It was so great.